You should not have come up here. Auntie Ajwa said it a second time, softer, and she did not raise her voice for the family the way Amara had braced for. She did the opposite. She stepped fully into the study, and she reached back with one ringed hand, and she pulled the door shut behind her, closing the two of them into the dim and the smell of old paper and a dead man's cologne. And then she stood with her back against that door, as if to keep the whole house out. And Amara, who had spent the entire evening armored against this woman's cruelty, found herself looking at something she had never once seen on Auntie Ajwa's face in 34 years of knowing her. She was afraid. Not offended, not scheming. Afraid. In the deep way that ages a person 10 years in a breath, the way that makes the proud go small. Her hand had drifted up to the heavy gold pendant at her throat and closed around it, and she was holding it the way frightened people hold the things they think will protect them. And her eyes were fixed not on Amara's face, but on the photograph trembling in Amara's hand. "Put it back," Ajwa whispered. "I am begging you. Put it back in that drawer and put your father's letter back with it and walk out of this house tonight and do not ever come looking for the rest of it. I have kept you away from this your whole life. Do you understand what I am saying to you? I did all of it. Every unkind thing, every cold word. I did it to keep you far from this room. And you walked straight into it, wearing red like you wanted them to see you." Amara's mouth had gone dry. The letter was still pressed against her chest, her name in her father's hand, and the photograph was still burning between her fingers, her gentle, scholarly father with his arm around a calm and dangerous Korean man in front of a building she did not know, and 3 words on the back that she had not been allowed to read twice. "What did my father have to do with the man I brought into this house?" Amara said. Her voice did not shake. She was proud of that, even now, even here. And Auntie Ajwa closed her eyes, and when she opened them, the last of her composure was gone, and she said the thing that turned the whole evening over like soil. "Your father was not who you think he was," she said, "and neither is the man downstairs. Neither of them, Amara. And now that you have seen his face in that photograph, they are going to know you know. And once they know you know, I cannot protect you anymore. Nobody can. Except, God help us all, the one man in this house you should be most afraid of." Downstairs, faint through the floor, Kwame's voice was rising again, calling her name, calling everyone's attention to her empty chair, turning even her absence into a game. And upstairs, in the dark, Amara understood that she had come into this house chasing one small thing that belonged to her, and she had pulled on it, and the whole world had started to come with it. "Tell me," Amara said. "You have spent my whole life deciding what I am allowed to know. You do not get to stop now, in this room, on the one night I finally got inside it. Tell me who my father was." Auntie Ajwa did not move from the door. Her hand stayed closed around the gold pendant, and in the dim light of the study, with the noise of the family rising and falling beneath their feet like the breathing of some large animal, she began, at last, to talk. "Your father came to this country with nothing," she said. "You know that part. That part is the story we all tell. The clever boy who worked and studied and made himself into a man people respected. That part is true. But there is a piece we cut out of the story before you were old enough to hear it, and we cut it out for a reason. When your father was young, before you, before your mother even, he did work for men who did not do business the way the rest of us do business. He was clever and he was careful, and he could make numbers say whatever needed saying, and there are men in this world who pay a great deal for a person like that, and ask no questions about where he learned it. Your father kept books that were never meant to be seen, for years. for dangerous people. Amara stood very still. The photograph seemed to grow heavier in her hand. "The man in that picture," Ajwa said, and her voice dropped even lower, "was one of those people. The one your father trusted most, and the one he feared most, which, with those men, is always the same person. They were close, closer than brothers for a time. And then your father did the thing that clever, careful men are never supposed to do. He decided he wanted out. He wanted a wife and children and a study full of books and a life where no one ever knocked on his door in the middle of the night. And you do not simply leave that world, Amara. There is a price for the door. Your father paid a piece of it and promised the rest, and then he built the whole rest of his life, this house, this family, all of it, on top of a debt he prayed would never be collected." "And now," Amara said. The word came out of her cold and certain. "Now it is being collected." Auntie Ajwa looked at her, and the look was almost pity. "Now," she said, "they have come to collect it from the only thing your father left behind that they can put their hands on. His name. His blood. You." The floor of the study did not move, but something under Amara moved anyway. She had walked into this house believing she was the smallest thing in it, the failure, the cautionary tale, the woman they invited back for the pleasure of watching her fall. And all along, she had been the collateral. All along, the humiliation had been a leash, a way to keep her here, visible and manageable and dressed up like a fool, until the men her father owed came to claim her. Kwame's cruelty, the toast, the story about the wedding, all of it was not sport. It was crowd control. They were keeping the goat calm before the slaughter. "And the man downstairs," Amara said. "Han Doyoon. What is he? Whose piece is he?" Auntie Ajwa's face did something complicated. "That," she said, "is the part I cannot answer, because I do not understand it myself. When I saw him walk in beside you tonight, I nearly fainted. Do you understand me? I have not been that frightened in 30 years. Because that man is not a collector. Men like that do not come to collect a debt in person. They send others. They stay far away and clean. And yet there he was, walking through my front door with his hand on your back like you were the most precious thing in the world. And I looked at his face, and I saw the man in that photograph looking back at me across 30 years, and I thought, God have mercy, it has finally come, and it has come wearing a kind face for her." She pushed herself off the door then, and she crossed the small room, and she took Amara's face in both her ringed hands, and for the first time in Amara's living memory, the touch was gentle. "I was cruel to you your whole life," she said, "so that you would hate this family enough to stay away from it and be safe. It did not work. You came back for a letter. So now I will do the only thing left. I am going to take you out of this house tonight, out a door your cousins do not watch, and I am going to tell you the rest of it somewhere they cannot hear. And then you are going to disappear so completely that not even your father's ghost can find you. Do you understand me? Put the picture down and come with me, now." And Amara, who had spent 3 years learning to trust no one, looked into the frightened eyes of the woman who had spent 30 years being cruel to her out of love, and felt the ground of her whole life shifting, and did the thing that would define the rest of the night. She said, "No." She said, "Not until I have talked to him." She said, "Because a man does not put his hand on my back like I am precious, in a house full of people who want me broken, unless he wants something. And I have spent enough of my life being wanted for what I could give other people. I am going to look him in the eye, and I am going to ask him what he came here for. And then I will decide who I run from." She put the letter in her small bag. She kept the photograph in her hand. And she opened the study door, and she walked out past her aunt, down the stairs, back into the gold light and the noise and the smiling faces, changed, carrying the truth like a live coal, straight toward the calm, still man she had brought in as a shield. He was where she had left him. Of course he was. Han Doyoon did not pace and did not fidget and did not scan for her the way an ordinary man would have. He simply waited, near the tall windows at the edge of the great room, a glass of water in his hand that he was not drinking, watching the party the way a man watches weather. And when Amara came down the stairs, his cold, deep-set eyes found her instantly, and something in them changed, some small tightening around the thin, pale scar that stripped his right eyebrow, because he saw the photograph in her hand before she had crossed half the room. She stopped in front of him. She did not lower her voice as much as she should have. "You knew my father," she said. He looked at the photograph, and then he looked at her, and he did not deny it. That was the thing about him she was already learning. He did not lie the way other men lied, with too many words. He simply chose which truths to hand her and let the rest stay dark. "Yes," he said. "You knew him, and you did not tell me. You let me hire you like you were a stranger. You sat at that table beside me all night with his face in your history, and you said nothing." "You did not hire me," he said quietly. The words landed strangely. "What?" she said. "You think you hired a man to stand beside you tonight?" Doyoon said. "The message you sent, the arrangement you thought you were making, it never reached the person you thought it reached. It reached me, and I came." He set the glass of water down on the windowsill, unhurried, the small sound of it somehow drawing her whole attention. "I have been waiting a long time for a reason to walk into this house, Amara. You gave me one. So no, you did not hire me. You called me. There is a difference, and before this night is over, you are going to understand exactly how large a difference it is." Every answer he gave her opened 3 new doors. That was the maddening thing. She had come down those stairs to corner him, and instead she felt the floor widening under her with every quiet sentence. Why had he been waiting to come into this house? What did he want that was in it? Who had he been to her father? The trusted one, or the feared one? And if the man in the photograph was his father, then what did that make Doyoon? The son of the thing her father had run from his whole life. She opened her mouth to ask, and that was when Kwame ruined everything. Because Kwame could not bear, could never in his life bear, to not be the most important thing in any room he stood in. He had watched Amara come down the stairs, changed. He had watched her walk straight to the Korean man and speak to him with a new, hard confidence that did not fit the broken cousin he had spent all night constructing for the family's entertainment. And Kwame, who was not as clever as he believed himself to be and far more frightened than he would ever admit, made a decision. He had been told, by the people running the real business of this night, that the letter and the photograph in his cousin's possession were not to leave the house. He had been told there would be money in it, and standing, and the approval of men whose approval he craved like air. And he looked at Amara, and he looked at the escort she had brought, the quiet foreigner in the good suit, and he thought, as small men think, that a man that quiet must be a man that soft. He had brought people for exactly this. 2 of them, waiting near the kitchen doors, men who did not belong to the family and did not pretend to. The kind of men you notice at a party because they are the only ones not enjoying it. And Kwame lifted his chin at them, and they crossed the room, and the taller one put himself directly in front of Amara and held out a flat, open hand and said, "The picture and the letter. Now." And when Amara did not move, he reached for her bag. He did not reach for it for very long. What happened next happened so quietly that most of the party never even turned to look, and that was the horror of it, that a thing so final could happen in a crowded golden room full of laughter, and no one would remember it until later, when the man it happened to left the house, walking like something inside him had been rearranged. Han Doyoon did not shout. He did not throw the first punch that a lesser man would have thrown to impress the woman beside him. He took one step, A single unhurried step, and he did something to the reaching man's wrist and arm that folded him downward without any visible violence at all. Folded him the way you fold a letter, and the man's face went from contempt to confusion to a white, blank agony in the space of a breath, and he made a sound that was not loud, a thin, high sound, and then he was on his knees on the polished floor, with his arm held at an angle arms are not meant to reach. And Doyoon leaned down, close, the way you lean down to tell a child something important, and he spoke to the man in that even and almost gentle voice, and the few people close enough to hear it went pale and stepped back. "You put your hand toward her," Doyoon said. "I am going to explain something to you, once, because you are going to walk out of this house, and you are going to tell the man who sent you exactly what I say, word for word, and if you change even one word, he will know, because he knows me, and he will do to you what I am choosing, tonight, out of a patience I do not fully understand, not to do. This woman is not collateral. This woman is not a piece of a debt. Whatever you were told about tonight was a lie, and the men who told it to you are already, at this moment, worth less than they were an hour ago, and they simply do not know it yet. Go and tell them Han Doyoon was in the house. Go and tell them he came himself. And then go far, and be small, and be grateful." He let the man's arm go. The man got up. The man did not run, because you do not run in front of Han Doyoon. Some animal part of him understood that. But he walked to the door faster than a man walks when he is not afraid, and his companion went with him, and neither of them looked back, and the golden party flowed around the empty space they left the way water flows around a stone, and Kwame stood at the edge of it with his wine glass frozen halfway to his smug, crooked mouth and the color draining out of his well-fed face as he understood, finally and completely, what he had done. He had tested whether the quiet man was soft. He had his answer. And the men he had wanted to impress were going to hear that he had brought 2 of their people into a room with Han Doyoon and gotten them broken for nothing. Amara stood through all of it without stepping back. That was the thing she would think about afterward, lying awake. She had watched a man fold another man like paper, had watched his cold face and heard his gentle voice describe ruin as if describing the weather, had seen exactly and unmistakably what the hands that had held hers under a table were capable of, and she had not run. 3 years ago, the sight of any of this would have sent her fleeing into the night. Tonight, she stood her ground beside the most dangerous thing in the room and felt, God help her, something that was not fear. If you have ever stood in a room and felt safe next to the exact thing you were told your whole life to be afraid of, then you already know the terrible confusion Amara was living inside. Welcome back to Afro Korean Timeless Stories. If you are feeling what this story is doing, if your chest is tight and you cannot look away, do this storyteller a kindness and type, "I am enjoying it" in the comments, and share this with someone who lives for love that finds its way through impossible things. A sister, a best friend, the one person who would understand. Subscribe so the next part reaches you the moment it lands, because it lands hard. Thank you for staying with me. Now let me show you what happened when the room went quiet, and the softness came, and it undid her more than any of the danger had. Because here is what Han Doyoon did next, and it was so small that no one but Amara saw it, and it went through her like a blade goes through silk. The confrontation was over. The men were gone. The party's noise was rebuilding itself, too bright, too fast, everyone agreeing without words to pretend. And Doyoon turned from the door back to Amara, and the cold went out of his face. Not all of it, that cold never fully left him, but the working part of it, the part that had just broken a man, and underneath it was something quiet and tired and human. And he reached into the inside pocket of his matte black jacket, and he took out a folded square of cloth, an old handkerchief, worn soft with age, and he held it out to her. "Your father carried this," he said. He gave it to me a long time ago, the last time I saw him, and he told me that if I ever met his daughter I should return it, because it belonged to her mother, and it should stay in the family. I have kept it 11 years. He said your mother used to press flowers in it. He said you would know the smell. Amara took it with a hand that had gone numb. She lifted it toward her face. And under the old paper and the years there was the faintest ghost of something, a flower, a memory she had not known she still held. Her mother at a kitchen table with a book of pressed petals, humming, before she got tired, before she stopped. And Amara's careful 3-year armor, the armor that had survived the study and the truth and the broken man on the floor, cracked straight down the middle, because the most dangerous man in the city had just handed her back her mother. She looked up at him. Her eyes were wet, and she did not care. "Why?" she said. "Why would you keep this for 11 years? Why would you carry a dead man's handkerchief in the pocket of a suit like that?" And Han Doyoon, who did not make speeches, who did not perform, looked at her for a long moment, and then he said the truest thing he had said all night, and he said it so simply that it hurt more than anything cruel could have. "Because he asked me to," he said, "and your father was the only person in my life who ever asked me for something small." Amara had to look away from him then. She had to. Because that was the thing about this man that was going to undo her. She could feel it happening in real time, and she could not stop it. He did not want to impress her. He did not want to be thanked. He noticed things. He remembered things. He kept things 11 years and returned them without being asked twice. And he did it all with the same still hands that could end a man between 2 sentences. The last man who had made her feel safe had made her feel safe for a year, and then left her standing in white in front of 400 people. Safety, she had learned, was the beautiful lie that came right before the fall. She knew that. She had built a whole life on knowing that. And here was a man handing her back her mother's handkerchief with hands that had blood on them somewhere. And every instinct she had trusted for 3 years was telling her to run. And she did not want to run. And wanting not to run frightened her more than any broken arm ever could. She stepped back, slower than she had ever stepped back from anything. But she stepped back. That was when she felt the ringing. It was in Doyoon's pocket, a phone, and he took it out and looked at the name on it, and something happened to his face that she had not seen all night. Not fear. This man did not do fear, but a stillness that was different from his other stillnesses, a listening stillness, a gathering. He put the phone to his ear and said nothing at all. He listened. And across the room, near the kitchen doors, Amara saw Seojin, the watchful young man who had opened her car door a lifetime ago at the start of this endless night, straighten up from where he had been standing against the wall, one hand going to his ear, his scanning eyes suddenly moving faster. And she understood without being told that both men were hearing the same thing at the same moment, and that the thing was very bad. She learned in the next 30 seconds 3 things that turned the whole night over one final time. She learned it by watching. Seojin crossed the room to Doyoon, quick and low, and he leaned in and said something short, and Amara was close enough to catch 2 words. One was a name, Botang, the drunk man from dinner, the loud one who had put his hand on Doyoon's shoulder and then left without his coat and never been seen again. And the way Seojin said the name, flat and final, told Amara everything she had not let herself understand about where that man had gone. He was not sleeping it off somewhere. He was not going to walk in tomorrow sheepish and hungover. Botang was simply gone, cleanly, the way a chair is removed from a room. And the man who had removed him was standing beside her, holding her mother's flowers a moment ago. That was the first thing. The second thing was the second word Seojin said, and it was worse. He said, "They know." And Doyoon's cold eyes moved slowly to Amara's face and stayed there. And the third thing Amara learned in the space of that look was the thing that rearranged the entire evening and everyone in it. She had spent all night thinking the powerful people in this house were her family. Kwame with his toasts, Auntie Ajwoa with her secrets, the men Kwame had brought in his cheap, borrowed authority. She had thought she was the smallest thing in a house full of people who had power over her. And she understood now, watching the most feared man in the city go still at a name whispered in his ear, that she had never once glimpsed the real shape of the thing she was inside of. Her family were not the powerful ones. Her family were frightened people standing on top of a trap door, keeping her calm because they were terrified of what was underneath. Doyoon was not the danger her family had feared. Doyoon was the only thing standing between her and the danger had just told him, through a phone, that it was coming, and it was close. Auntie Ajwoa appeared at Amara's elbow then, out of nowhere, her ringed hand closing hard around Amara's wrist, her voice a fierce, frightened whisper. "Now," she said. "We go now, out the side, while they are distracted. I will tell you everything in the car, but we have to go this second, Amara. Please, I am begging you one last time." And for one moment, it looked like the whole terrible night might end the only good way it could, with Amara slipping out a quiet door on the arm of the aunt who had been cruel to keep her safe, carrying her letter and her photograph and her mother's handkerchief and the beginning of the truth, vanishing into the dark before the danger arrived. For one moment there was relief, real relief, the summit in sight. And then the lights at the front of the house swept bright across the tall windows, headlights, more than one car, pulling up the long drive fast and stopping without care for the family cars already parked there. And the golden party noise faltered and died as 40 people turned toward the windows at once, and Seojin's voice, for the first time in the entire endless night, was not calm. It cracked. He said, "Doyoon," and only that, one word. The right hand rattled at last, and that single frightened syllable from the one man who never showed fear told Amara exactly how bad the thing on the doorstep was. Doyoon moved. He put himself between Amara and the front of the house, and his hand found the small of her back again, but not gently this time, not the precious, careful touch from the beginning of the night. This was different. This was a man turning his body into a wall, and he did not look at the door. He looked at her. He looked at Amara Mensah in her wine-red dress with her mother's flowers in her hand, and 3 years of armor finally cracked open. And he said the quiet and absolute thing that reframed the entire evening, every hour of it, all the way back to the black car outside the hotel. "I did not come here to protect a stranger," he said. "I came here to protect you. I have been coming here to protect you, since before you knew my name. Whatever your father owed, I have spent 11 years making sure it would never touch you. And tonight, the men who want to collect it anyway found out you were in a room I was standing in." He did not raise his voice, even now, even with the headlights blazing through the windows and car doors slamming out in the dark. He said, "They are not here for the family, Amara. They were never here for the family. They are here for you. Because of a name your father gave you, and a promise he made before you were born, and a piece of paper you are still carrying that you have not read. Stay behind me," he said, "and do not, whatever happens in the next 5 minutes, let go of that letter." And out in the dark, the doors of the house came open, and the cold night air came in, and Amara stood behind the most dangerous man in the city, with her mother's flowers in one hand and her father's unread letter in the other, and understood at last that the target of everything, the center of the whole buried machine, the thing all of them had been circling all night long, was her. Who is coming through that door? What did Baba Mensah promise before Amara was born? And whose name did he give her? What does the unread letter say? The one Doyoon told her to hold on to with her life. And how does a man protect a woman from an entire world that has finally come to collect, without becoming, in front of her, the very monster she was raised to fear? Tell me in the comments who you think just pulled into that driveway. I know, and I am not telling you yet. Subscribe so the next part finds you the instant it arrives, because part 3 is where you finally learn what those 3 words on the photograph said, and it changes everything. Everything you thought you understood about the man standing between Amara and the door. Stay with me. It only gets deeper from here.